Now let's get it all in perspective for all y'all enjoyment.
You still a slave to the white man?
Y'all gonna start calling my wife the white man, all right?
Newness, here's the anthem. Put your hands up that you shoot with. Count your
But
loot
we
with.
don't on Juneteenth.
Oh, hell no.
Where are you going?
Look for the fuse box. What kind of house is this? No, thank you.
The Blackening?
Whoa! Jim Crow Monopoly.
Shit probably runs on racism.
The Blackening. All right. All right. So when this movie came out, I believe it was back in like June or July or May, around like the summertime, I was thinking this looks pretty funny and I wanted to see it. I missed it when it came out in theaters, so then I did my my best of and worst of video of the year, and I watched a couple of movies like a couple of days before I made my list together. This was one of them, and I'm actually glad that I did. I'm glad that I did. So this movie is about a bunch of people. They come together. They were like old friends, and they're kind of like reuniting. It's like a big reunion. I believe they're going to a cabin to have this reunion on, I believe it was Juneteenth, I believe. And they're basically, you know, they're drinking, all that stuff. They're like partying and all that. And then they find a game room, and they find this game called the Blackening in there, and it basically plays on the horror tropes that we're well familiar with by now, but it adds a new spin onto it. So now a killer is, you know, trying to kill them, and they're trying to, one, not just survive, but also survive the consequences of the game they're playing. And this, I knew, the director of this is Tim Story. Now, he's done some movies in the past that, you know, were good, like Barbershop, but then he's also done some movies like Fantastic Four, not the remake, whatever, the one from like 2000s. And then my most hated movie in, I believe it was 2021 or 22. I think it was 2020. The Tom and Jerry movie. I absolutely despise that movie. But this is also written by two writers. One of them did Girls Trip, which I've seen clips of. I've seen parts of that, and the parts I did see, that was pretty funny. And the other one worked on like Brooklyn Nine-Nine for a while. So I was going like, okay, you know, this should be interesting. I sat down, I started watching it, and the movie doesn't really kick in until around the 15-20 minute mark. That's really when the movie starts, and the movie's like an hour and a half long. So around like the 15-20 minute mark, when they actually get to the cabin, that's when the real movie starts. That's when the movie kicks in. And, you know, this is, you know, it's a comedy movie, you know, it's a horror comedy. But there really is no like real consequences in the movie. So you could look at that as either being positive or a negative. To me, I was going into this thinking like, yeah, I don't really think there's going to be any consequences to this. I don't really think a lot of these people are going to die. So there really is no... It doesn't feel like there's a whole lot of stakes involved. It just, you know, if it's a movie where you could put it on, like if you're having like a party or something, this I think is a good movie to put on in the background for parties. Because it does have that, like, you know, you can sit with, you know, a bunch of your friends and, you know, have like a drink, maybe some like food, like pizzas or stuff, and watch this movie, and I think you'll get a kick out of it. You know, I think you'll have a good time watching it. Me personally, I was laughing a lot in the movie, and a lot of stuff that I wasn't expecting to laugh at. And, there were some surprises in the movie for me. Now, when it comes to the characters, they kind of bordered the line between, likable and annoying. So they basically started out being that, like, standing on that tightrope, and we're basically standing on that the entire movie. And, that's fine. And, like, slowly, like, the tightrope was getting higher and higher. So it's like, okay, they started slowly making their way up from being just middle of the road characters. So it's cool. I like that. I like that approach they did. I think this is it. Like I said, it's a fun party movie. There really is, when it comes to horror stuff, it's not really that horrifying, to be honest. I mean, there's some things of blood and gore. There's also some moments in here where I can clearly tell, like, oh yeah, that is not a good effect, or I can clearly tell what that is, kind of moments. So I'm sure they kind of looked back at the editing and went, like, they spotted them too, but they said, you know what, it's supposed to be kind of dumb, it's supposed to be a fun party movie, so we can leave it. It also, the relationships that everybody has, yes, they're getting back together, and yes, they're having a reunion, but also some of them have their own problems with one another. And I like how through the course of the movie, yes, they're on edge, and they don't think that they're gonna get out alive, so they start, like, telling people, like, hey, like, I'm sorry about this, like, yeah, this thing that happened, that just happened. So I like how they're growing as characters and growing as people. And this does kind of feel like, it does feel like a different version of, I would say, You're Next. If you ever seen that movie, you kind of, the third act of that one is kind of like oh, that's actually clever. Like, that's interesting, that's cool, and that's clever. This kind of does the same thing here. Yeah, I won't spoil anything, but if you've seen Your Next, you'll kind of have comparisons to that. And I know I certainly did. And I was like, oh, so it's like that movie. So at the end of the day, the writing is nothing to, clap about. It's nothing to look at through a lens and go, like, yeah, that was written extremely well, or this piece of dialogue was absolutely fantastic, like, it's Oscar worthy. No, they know exactly what they're doing. They know what kind of movie they're making. They're making a fun movie. And that's all they were doing. And it can kind of get old fast, but what kept pulling me back was that these characters were constantly saying something, like, constantly, like, especially with the dialogue. Like, if something horrific happened, they'd be all freaking out, and then they're doing something, and then one of them would just burst out saying something, and that thing just made me laugh. And it was funny. It was funny the whole time. So, like I said, at the end of the day, it's not a movie to look at through a lens. This is not an Oscar-worthy movie, but it's a fun movie that I think if you watch with your friends or your buddies I think you would have a good time watching it. So that's this kind of movie. So on that scale, this, I think, gets a great, just on that scale. And, they said that there's a possibility that this could get a sequel. I personally don't see a sequel happening, or them figuring out how a sequel could work. But, we'll see what they do. But I know a lot of people kind of missed this movie when it came out, and I think it had like a $5 million budget, but it was able to get its money back, and it was like, if you really look at it, yes, that's a bomb, but in the retrospect of it being a pretty small budget independent movie, that's actually pretty good. So who knows? We'll see what they do, but you know, like I said, this is a fun party movie that I think I would want to see in the theaters with a bunch of my friends or a bunch of people, and we just have a good time. It's a fun, it's a popcorn movie. It's a movie where you just eat popcorn and just have a laugh. No, it's a horror comedy, but the horror really is like the environment, but also it's playing on your nostalgia of previous horror movies that you've seen. So it's kind of like it's the classic cabin in the woods. Okay, you're just deserted. All right, you're in the middle of nowhere. So it plays on that. But other than that, there's really nothing horrific about the movie. So I think even if you're a bit squeamish when it comes to horror stuff, I think you can, or when you're squeamish around like not watching horror movies, the comedy overpowers the horror. So I think you'll have a good time watching this movie, but definitely watch it with friends because it makes it more fun.
There's a crazy person out here hunting us. You got Rosa Parks on your shirt, right? Would she be sitting down right now?
I mean, that's exactly what she did.
You could shut up.
Made you look. Made you look.
Why black women gotta save everyone all the damn time?
Made you look.
Yo, stop playing.
I got a gun.
That's too DMX. What are you doing?